In this video, we're going to talk about the one button rotation. Okay, this is hopefully going to be the last time I talk about this, but I do want to give my thoughts on actually what I have experienced using it so far. Then we're going to be reacting to a comment that maybe a little bit different than normal. Like, this is not me trying to like blow this person out or anything like that. I'm actually very interested in hearing your thoughts on this topic and, you know, what the person is bringing up versus what I'm bringing up. I'm very interested in hearing your thoughts on it. But I just want to say that I used it. It's absolutely horrendous for Blood Death Knight. Like, it doesn't even make sense. It does use CDs. People kept saying it wasn't going to use CDs. It does use Dancing Rune Weapon, and it does use Bone Storm, which is very, very strange because it doesn't use Tombstone or Summon the Ghoul, which I have no idea who decided this. As far as I can say, that's a bug. Like, it doesn't even make sense. Why would it use Bone Storm but not Tombstone? They're the same fucking spell. They both have an offensive component. They both have a defensive component, and they both factor into using Dancing Rune Weapon. So it doesn't make any sense why you would use Rune Weapon and then Bone Storm, but not Tombstone. So it's basically unusable because, yeah, one way or the other, even if you were just trying to do DPS as a tank, it's unusable. But it was never really meant to be for tanks, I guess. Instead, it's for DPS. I did also switch to Frost and Unholy. And I don't know how good it is because I had never played the specs before really in my life. But I will say it was quite fun to use it because I literally didn't even need to have a UI. Like, a lot of times when you play an alt spec or an alt or whatever, it's like you gotta get the UI set up, you gotta read the spells, you gotta figure them out, you gotta look at talent builds. I just put in default talent. You don't even have to do that. You can just go to Radar.io and copy some guys' talents if you want. Like, you know, you don't have to even think about it. You put them in, one button rotation. No UI. You don't even need things on the screen. You can get rid of every spell that's in the rotation. Just put your defensives on a button, and you know, that's all you need really. Your interrupt maybe, you know, your hearth. That's it. You got everything you need. You're ready within minutes. And yeah, you can level characters this way. It actually works. I did a leveling challenge where I don't take all the talent points. I call it the one talent point only challenge. We only use a very limited amount of talents to kind of emulate a classic feel to the characters. It works with them too. It's crazy. It's really actually very good. And I like it because you can just hop on a character and just play the character. You don't even need to think about it. So that's actually kind of cool. But is probably not very good for endgame content, right? You would think. But there's been a lot of debate about this. And if you asked me 1 month ago, which is when this comment was left, I would say there's not going to be a debate. It's going to be objectively worse, and no competitive player is going to use it. But I'm sure you guys have known, there are some competitive players using it, and they're making videos on it, and it's causing a lot of confusion. So I just want to address that before we move on. I don't understand why people are confused by it, because if you're a competitive player and it's objectively lowering your damage and you're still beating other players in the Mythic Plus dungeons that you're in or in the raid that you're in or whatever else, that simply means that either those players are bad, like they're so much worse than you that you can just fuck around and gap them, or your class is overpowered compared to theirs, or your like loadout on the one button rotation is more optimized than theirs are, okay? So there's a few reasons that this might be a concern. But the fact that you're doing top damage using the one button rotation is not one of them, because it's failing to account for the fact that there's other players in the group that are below you who aren't using it. Like, I don't understand that. Like, the whole comment about that, it doesn't make any sense to me. It's like there's somebody in the group who's doing worse than you and they're trying their hardest. That's an indictment of them and not the system, not the thing. Okay. So, but then there's other people who've come forward saying that they're actually improved DPS with it. That they were doing like 2.9K, now they're doing 3K or 3 million, whatever. So if that's true, what are we talking about here? Is the reality that this thing is actually competitive? Now this all comes back to this comment. So I want to read this comment and I want to give this guy his due because I still have no idea what he's talking about, frankly. But it makes a lot more sense now that we've seen it play out the way it has, okay? So he's talking about tanks at first. Obviously, we know about that. He says, another question is, what percentage of the best possible rotation would you get out of this? This was, again, well before anybody knew about it. We already know the best rotation. Every class is public API, which is a bit that don't say that because that's not how rotations work. But in general, yes, all of it's mathed out. Blizzard doesn't even need to code their own. Obviously they do. But if you can do 75% of the best rotation using this one button helper, this is what I'm talking about, by the way. I want your opinions on this. If you can do 75% of the best rotation using this one button helper, that would put you in the upper half of cutting edge players. Would it? Assuming you could do mechanics properly now that your brain power is free thanks to not having to worry about rotation. A good aside there, okay? So I said in reply to that, do you think the rotation alone would do that? I think endgame content is mostly about using utility and survival. But yeah, I agree it's pointless. Okay, so we're talking about the other stuff that we're not commenting on here today. But his statement is like, well, if you're, if to get 100th percentile parse, the rotation has to be utterly perfect, no mistakes, which I don't think that's how it works, first of all. But regardless, if that was empirically factual, then, and you can do 75% of the rotation, then you can simply extrapolate that and compare it to where your average Mythic Raider is. And it looks like your average Mythic Raider is below 75 percentile. You know what I mean? So this would indicate that everybody in the raid would improve by using the one button rotation. And as such, you would become currently a upper half of cutting edge player. Now, I don't understand why that is the only thing being considered. And that's why I go on and on about this. But I want to keep reading his position on this because I really want to hear detailed thoughts on this and whether or not this is true, or how do you feel about this? So his response is, if the auto rotation ends up being 75% of the best DPS, absolutely. We can already verify this by taking 75% of the best DPS of any spec and watching where it puts us in rankings. Right now, aka at the Hall of Fame level. If it ends up being 65% of the best DPS, maybe really late cutting edge at max item level. If it ends up being 50%, it's still good enough for heroic. The DPS check in this game is extremely lenient. It will be interesting to see how far one button assist will get you. So I'm still like, is it lenient or not? Like if you're basing cutting edge and Hall of Fame based on percentage of DPS, then it's not lenient, right? I still don't understand. The whole thing makes my head spin, because to me, at times when we were raiding in the past, there was actual DPS checks, but it was almost never true. We almost never fought a boss that our guild theoretically could not beat DPS wise. So I just don't think this matters. Like, I really don't think this is a thing that anybody is reliably failing high-end content, and especially Mythic Plus. I don't give a shit about rating. I don't know why this keeps getting brought up, but we'll just talk about it in the same breath. But in Mythic Plus, I don't think there's any keys out there that fail because people are not, you have 3 people who are doing suboptimal DPS. It never happens. It's always about failures of other sorts. Okay. So I respond, the best DPS is not dedicated simply by pressing spells in a specific order. But I think this is the most important refutal to this, because it's not just about the order. It's about being in position. Like, you can't just, as a range, like, be running around doing mechanics. You're not going to be able to DPS. You know what I mean? So I think maybe a warrior or something like melee or something that has a lot of gap closing, it's possible. But I don't think just doing the rotation right is going to get you to 75% of your best, like, you know what I mean? I don't think that's how it works. So anyway, yeah, and then, talking about trinkets and potions and gearing in general. So he says, which is why I said if the auto button ends up being 70% of the optimal rotation. But still talking about that, we have a website dedicated to parses, Warcraft logs. You can get AOTC with some pretty abysmal players, and the one button rotation would have to be worse than that. It's a good point. If all you need to do is pot trinket CD on top of your one button rotation, I don't see how it changes much. Well, it definitely would, because you can't just pop them wildly, but in general, you might be right. But so I said, using the non-rotational CDs are required to maximize your damage. The rotational spells themselves are mostly brain-off stuff nobody really thinks about. Using your CDs well and at the right time is how you maximize your damage. I think that's true, right? Am I wrong? So he's saying, and how is that relevant to blah, blah, blah? And like at this point, I really don't even know what the comment that I'm reading is at this point. But the fact that it keeps going on is why I wanted to read it. Okay, so anyway, I just say, let's stop talking about this. We don't stop talking about this, of course. The concept of trying to guess what theoretical percentage of a perfect player you can achieve with this makes no sense. The stuff that isn't part of this is too important to your success. But so he's like continuing to say, like, I don't know. Well, what is the reply here? I really understand. We have isn't it API? I don't know what APL is. We have APL for every spec who do more damage than anyone realistically pull off on a consistent basis, including race to world first people. The average pleb doesn't do half of their potential. But I don't think that's because of their rotation. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's not because of the rotation. So I asked him to clarify his point. He says, in the simplest term, if playing with one button equals 75% of the top DPS output, you're a Hall of Fame raider. Which is like, that's not true, right? It's like not true. I don't understand. But I'm trying to get to the diffusing of the point here because it is very interesting. So this guy's saying he knows a lot about rating because he's done 4 Hall of Fames. Okay. Somebody replies, you are so delusional, it's actually crazy. He doesn't see that comment. I think probably they got automatically held. But anyway, this comes back up, okay? So this is why we're making the video. So this is 5 days ago. So this is after the patch is like the door is being knocked on. Now that the one button rotation is almost out and sims are being made with PTR data, with some specs like Marksman Hunter, one button rotation doing about 85% of the optimal DPS rotation, which is better than the majority of cutting edge rating hunters. Did your position change? No. He says, sad. Spelled it wrong. See you in a few months when one button rotation is the norm for the lower half of cutting edge guilds. Okay. That's kind of where we should stop because I really have no idea. I asked him to get in Discord. He never replied again. So, but okay. So let's talk about this actual point. Okay. Do you think, first of all, do you think any of this is relevant? I have no idea what he's trying to say here. Like, I don't understand. Like, I guess you're looking at theoretical stuff too much here because I don't understand it. I really can't understand it. I can't wrap my head around it. The 75% of the top DPS output has nothing to do with whether or not you're a Hall of Fame raider. It doesn't even make sense. Like, it really doesn't even make sense. If you're able to do 75% of your theoretical maximum DPS, you might not even be in a fucking guild that wants to try to get Hall of Fame. Like, that doesn't make any fucking sense. No sense whatsoever to me. You guys want to try to explain it to me, feel free. I don't know. But the interesting point about it is that there are probably a lot of people out here who would actually be better using it than not. Okay? And so if that is his point, cool. I get it. I get it now. Okay, I don't know that is because I asked for it. But anyway, if that's his point, great. I get it now. It makes a lot of sense if that's the point. And so is this a good thing or a bad thing? Do you guys have an opinion on this? Do you feel like this is true? Do you think it's enough? Do you think the theoretical DPS matching, like, because again, I don't know where this number even comes from. I don't know if this is right or not. I've asked Faxley about it. He says it's not right. I don't know. You guys tell me. Sims don't make any sense to me because you still have to press the other buttons. That to me, unless the class actually has nothing that's not included in the one button rotation, we can't know how effective it's going to make you. Like, we have no idea. You might not even press your CDs. Like, you know what I mean? What's the difference then if you only use that? So I don't know. Like, there's spells that you have to use, like the situation with Blood Death Knight we mentioned. If you use Dancing Rune Weapon and Bone Storm and you don't have Death and Decay down, it doesn't do as much damage. And if you don't have Bone Shield, like you don't have a maximum amount of Bone Shield and you use Bone Storm, it's bad. So there's like factors here that need to be considered about this that can't really just be talked about like if they're always fact. Because it doesn't do your full actual rotation. Your rotation is your cooldowns as well. And sometimes other things like spells or other things like movement spells. You know what I mean? On a raid fight, you have to be able to attack. And there's a lot of mechanics that stop you from attacking. So, but anyway, the point is it beneficial to use it for your average player? And the more I read about it and the more I think about it, I think the answer is actually yes. And I talked about it at the beginning about how it requires no setup whatsoever. This is actually kind of crucial. This is more crucial than you think. I see a lot of people with garbled, jumbled UIs with all kinds of bullshit tracked. Like I see people send me Blood Death Knight footage with Blood Boil tracked. Like, come on, man. Like, you know, like this is just not useful. You have stuff on your screen that might seem useful, but you're not going to be able to look at it and make any informed decisions from it. And it's going to blind you from the stuff that is important. Okay. So if theoretically you could play a character and you don't have to worry about the rotation whatsoever, and all you have to do is track your CDs and your interrupts and your defensives, this theoretically should make you a better player, no matter what the DPS loss is on the actual rotation. Because unless you're already doing all of that perfectly, you've freed up brain space. And so he said this at the very beginning, never talked about it again. But this is actually the real reason that it should be considered. And I think, the final comment, it could be true. It could actually be true. See you in a few months when one button rotation is the norm for the lower half of cutting edge guilds. You might very well be right, but it has nothing to do, you know what I mean? It has nothing to do with the theoretical DPS of it. It has everything to do with the fact that it makes the game easier to process. And so at this point, we now cross a new threshold. If you are a player and you are struggling to survive in content, or just say struggling to perform, let's just say that, one way or the other. You could make that definition of whatever you like in your head. And somebody comes to you and say, hey, I like playing with you, but your performance would be better if you used a one button rotation. You're going to have to use it, or we're going to have to remove you from the guild. What is your thoughts? because I think most people would say no. I think most people would say, like, if you were not already using it and you know it could help you, or perhaps you don't know it could help you, but one way or the other, it would be a bruised ego moment. You would not want to do it because you think, I'm just not good enough. Fuck it, I'm out. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people would give up or quit or maybe even take offense to it. But it may be true. And now we're back on this topic of using the tools available to you. You know, the add-ons that help, like Hakili and other stuff that we talked about recently. You should use these things if they can help you. There's no reason not to. So I don't know that this is supposed to help you, though. I think maybe the final point to talk about here is, does Blizzard want it to help you? I think the answer is probably no. I think they added the GCD penalty so it wouldn't help you, but it's still going to help you. So the question is, will it help you enough that it will actually impact your success rate? Like, are you failing regularly because of DPS? I adhere to the idea that the answer is no. Regularly, no. But maybe, maybe sometimes, yeah. Maybe a couple percentage, maybe half, maybe, I don't know. But some of your failure might be related to your DPS. I would really, now at this moment, ask, I think I have to ask one specific person, Cop. I really have to ask you to try this. I really have to ask you to find a key. I don't know, you don't have resilient keys yet, I guess. But I would really like to see 2 of the same keys. One where you try your hardest, and one where you use the 1-button rotation and fill everything else in. And I would like to see the difference in practice. Because theory, everybody's talking about theory. I don't give a shit about theory, man. I really, I don't. At no point have I ever put any stock in Sims. It's pointless. There's too many things that stop you from doing maximum DPS, not just your brain. So I want to see it in practice, okay? And I challenge any damage dealer main out there, anybody who's struggling out there, anybody who's not doing, like, whatever. I don't want to make it sound like I'm better than you, okay? I'm not trying to say that right now. But I want to just say, like, if you're not, especially if you're like sub 12 right now, let's just say that, okay, that's, I don't know if you think it is or not, but you're struggling. If you're sub 12 right now, you can't get above 12. If you're sub 3K, maybe you could even say that. Just if you're not feeling like you're killing it right now, I would really appreciate you doing this, doing a run. Maybe even you don't even need to record it, just do it log or something. I don't know, but just show me the facts here, because there's a lot of people talking about theory, but it just doesn't matter, man. There's too many variables, and I'd be very interested to see like an adequate test comparing it, because I really think that my original statement on this was that you are not going to be impacted. Your theoretical DPS is irrelevant. Your rotation is irrelevant. And the only thing that really matters is how you play around everything else. Like, for most people, the rotation is fine. Like, you might have only already been doing 75% of your theoretical maximum, best rotation, but it doesn't even matter because you did everything else well, so you succeeded. So then at that point, would you use it? And then at that point, would people force you to use it? And then at that point, would you be offended if they did? Would you agree? Also, as an aside on that, how can anybody tell if you're using it? People are suggesting that there should be a buff or something that indicates if you're using it, but it's just a button. You can press it once and never again. So I don't know. Very interesting topic. Very interesting thoughts here. If anybody wants to elaborate on what this guy is saying, feel free to do that. Otherwise, yeah, I'm still confused by it, but it's interesting to think about. So what are your guys' thoughts on the 1-button rotation so far? Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one. Stay tuned. There's going to be all kinds of crazy shit coming, man.